It's all come down to this. Episode 10, opening night.
Focaccia. Again, please and thank you, bar seats 1 and 2.
It might not make sense to do the compare and contrast until this scene actually changes, but I just want to call out a couple of the qualities that we're noticing in this play out right here. So first one, you hear just Marcus in the background just asking for updates on counts. How many cannolis do I have? You also can compare this with the scene at the best restaurant in the world, 11 Madison Park, maybe let's call it, from Richie's staging episode, where the expediter was calling out and people were giving her like really clear and loud and confident callbacks. You also want to notice Sydney's direction and where she's facing in comparison to all of the other chefs in the background. It's like this very disconnected thing where Sydney's kind of talking and she's giving updates and she's kind of reading off what the tickets are, but it's absolutely not this like symphonic, interconnected, synchronized execution that you will see in a high functioning team. And so I'll leave it there until the scene changes. What is up and welcome back to the channel. My name is Justin Khanna. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already because we're on our way to 100,000 subscribers. And as per usual, if you've been enjoying these breakdown videos, leave a like on this video as well. We've also been seeing the credits flash at the beginning of this episode, and so I know that not everybody watches till the end of these videos, and so I want to take a second just here at the top of this episode to say thank you. And I'll echo my sentiment from season 1 as well, like everybody who worked on the show, the culinary producers, the lighting people, the audio people, the camera work, just like the people who edited and post-produced, and the people that they decided to source songs from for the music that plays in the show, the actors that play these characters on screen, the restaurants that were so kind to like let the team from the Bear into your restaurant to like either work or get some insights or to like test and make sure things are accurate. I mean, I had the joyous opportunity to meet Courtney Storer when she came to Washington and she did a dinner. My wife and I, of course, we were going to go and support her. And yeah, of course, I brought the team snacks. Whose channel do you think you're watching? And lastly, like the most selfish reason, like giving me an opportunity to break this show down. I obviously have so many personal connections through my experience with what plays out on screen here and the inspirations they decided to take for the show. But like, I have so much fun making these videos for you folks. Just like audience growth aside is one thing. Of course, it's nice to see like new faces coming to the channel and the DMs that you folks send me and being able to interact with and help you. Just the past few years for me in like pouring my energy and my resources and my time into creating educational products, especially for the Total Station Nomination students. I'm really trying to make that program world class. I want it to make an impact. I want it to make a difference. I really want it to help kickstart a career for you. And I'm not going to lie, that shift in priorities has taken my time away from this main channel. And so when I see that there's a new season of The Bear coming out, when I know that you folks enjoy these videos so much, I just get jazzed to be able to make these. And I'm so excited that this was renewed for a season 3 that we're also going to break down. And I promise, I'm going to asterisk the promise, but like, I really hope there isn't as much of a delay on me getting these videos out for you folks. Okay, with that massive kudos, fist bump, round of applause out of the way, let's get into episode 10.
Okay, got an order coming in. 2 bucatini, 2 T-bone,
Small, like cinematic filmmaking detail. We saw this in episode 7 of season 1, them doing it all in one take, or at least like, I know I saw the comments. It was like, there was definitely cuts at some points in time, but from a like cohesiveness standpoint, it very much so felt like one take. And this episode as well, the transitions between kitchen and dining room with the music changing and the lighting changes. And if you pay attention, maybe it's not one take for the full, whatever it is, 40 minutes of this episode, but you have these long stretches where for all intents and purposes, it is a long extended take where it's not just back and forth and back and forth. The camera work, the character work, like moving and dancing around a dining room, like it shows the prowess of the filmmaking team here too. Secondly, for better or for worse, you will often see owners or leadership taking the time to actually sit in the dining room and enjoy a full meal at the restaurant. Part of it is that you won't be able to unsee certain things when you're actually in the seat of a guest. And it's maybe like you as the owner probably haven't had a full meal from that seat where you're seeing the way that the sunset changes the lighting and the way that like certain things look from depending on your perspective and the angle at which you're sitting, or like the way that the air is drafting on you, or the way that the painting looks from this angle. There's a podcast interview I did with this guy named Arnold Björn, and he worked front of house at 11 Madison Park, and he tells this story on the show where he talks about Will Guidara actually having a meal at 11 Madison Park and all the little things he would notice. So it's absolutely reflected in this scene. I want to pause here because one, you're inviting your industry homies to your friends and family night. This is the guy from Avec that we watched a couple episodes back, but I wanted to actually do the math really quickly on the number of seats that they have in the dining room, because that's an important number as we're thinking about the execution of things and obviously the business side of how much revenue they can bring in based on the number of butts and seats that they can accommodate. And so the way that I'm doing the math, the row where kind of Nat is seated, those are, I think, 3 tables of 4, if we're kind of reflecting back on the architecture plans that were drawn up. So that's 12 right there. And then we're noticing on this booth, they're able to fit 6. It's not to say that every single table that sits here is going to be a party of 6, but we can max out at like 3 tables tables of 6 and the booths that are on the wall. So that's 18 more. So 12 plus 18, that's 30. And then in front of that set of booths here, it looks like we have 3 more sets of 4 tops here. So that's 12 more. So we have 42. And then just to the right of where we're like kind of looking at here, there is that kind of service station, that big kind of table where they have serviceware and glassware and the floral arrangement and whatever they have. And so that takes up a little bit of space. And so there's actually only 2 other 4 tops. And so that's 8 more. And so there's 50 seats here. Plus you have the seats at the bar, which I think was like 6 or 7 or 8 along that long stretch, and then 2 just at the end. And so let's say that there's 10 more. There's 60 seats, quote unquote. There's 50 in the dining room and then 10 at the bar at the Bear restaurant. And this is helpful because we can take the math that I did in an earlier episode where I was asking the question, how are they going to be able to pay off this 800 grand? What does the check average need to be? And this is taking into account, I think I did 100 guests per night. And this is actually not all that unrealistic because notice the 50 seats that I had in the dining room is considering every single booth is 6 tops. We noticed with Uncle Jimmy that there was only 2 people seated in that. And then based on the reservations, that actually might be the case where you have this 6 top that could be a 6 top, but it's only a 2 top for that night. If they open at 5:30, it's a 9-course tasting menu. Let's say it takes at least an hour and a half for that tasting menu to happen, probably closer to 2 hours. And so you're going from 5:30 to 7:30, let's say, and then you have to like clear that table. Maybe the table wants to stick around. They need to pay. They want to talk. They want to tour the kitchen, all of those sorts of details. You're saying that the next table can't technically come till at least maybe 7:30, 7:15. In certain cities, it is reasonable to turn that table maybe one more time to have a reservation come in at 9, but it's not the most common thing in the world for every single turn and every single seat to be filled at the restaurant. But I think the number that we needed to hit was 100 guests a night, and we needed to hit a $221 check average. And based on what we're seeing play out here, we're not like astronomically far off. Obviously, these are just back of napkin numbers, and the real kind of like nitty gritty P&L is going to vary drastically. But I'm a math guy. I love numbers. And so going into some of these nitty gritty hypotheticals just like gets me excited. If you came up with different answers or you viewed this in a different way, I'd love to know in the comments.
With tickets, I'll have Josh cover your station, okay?
Jeffrey.
Yeah.
I don't know where Josh went.
What does that even mean?
It means I don't know where the fuck he went.
Okay, you stay on your station, I'll cover Josh's station.
Let's put aside what we're about to see Josh doing here for a second and maybe just talk about I'm going to call it an unrealistic brigade shuffle that we're seeing play out on screen here. Because correct me if I'm wrong, Tina is a sous chef. And so asking a chef de partie in Josh to cover her station, whether she is like a tournante and she's just kind of like going around and helping stations where they need, I would think that Tina is more in charge of like plating or like slicing proteins or doing that kind of sous chef role. And so having Josh leave his station, who's going to cook the things coming off of Josh's station, right? So that's like a little bit of an unrealistic thing. But in this situation, if this were actually happening, it would be much more likely that Carmen would jump in and fill Sydney's role. Sydney would back up and she would do plates and wiping stuff and saucing things and coordinating all of the pickups based on Carmen's instructions, more so than having this reverse shift that's happening where Tina would come up and then Josh would move to her station for some reason, even though she doesn't have a station in the sense of like she's a sous chef. If you folks are seeing something different here, let me know, but that's what I'm observing.
Hi.
Chef. Sid, tickets, please.
Yes, chef.
Thank you, chef.
Okay, when they come out, oh, sorry.
Oh my god, and your solution is you take Marcus off of his solo station that he's running when he has not just pastries that he's needing to juggle, but also he has like a mid-course on the tasting menu. You're gonna have him come up on the pass? I know this changes later in the episode, but being able to see this from a gajillion miles away that you're setting yourself up for disaster here can really help you when you're actually working in a restaurant.
Marcus, we're down 12 bread sets, all right? We need them now. They gotta fucking walk, like, right now.
Correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't seen a break in the scene yet. There have been no cuts. This has been one continuous long take, and I can only imagine, like, the pressure on the actors. Like, how many times did they have to shoot this scene, and what was, like, the round of applause from everybody at the end of actually nailing this? Because think about it. One person getting their line wrong in this entire montage, like, they have to do the whole thing again because they have this in their head that this needs to be one continuous take. And so I'm noticing this. I'm not even the filmmaking guy. I'm the culinary guy, and I think this is fascinating and cool and very well executed.
Okay, go say hi.
Yeah, eventually.
Eventually?
Where the fuck is Josh?
Yo, just go.
Yo, I'll go and have a minute. I'm in the fucking shit. Leave me the fuck alone. I'll get there when I can get there.
I'm saying, just...
Chef Sydney, I need it all day.
All right, we've hit enough details where it makes sense to pause. So you hear Marcus asking for what's called an all day. That's the request from the person working the station of how many of X thing do I have ordered in? So in his case, if he's talking about the cannoli dish, he's asking how many cannolis are ordered in from the sense of like, we have people in the dining room that need this dish, that we have confirmed that they've ordered it. In a tasting menu context, it's a little bit easier because everybody who's seated for the most part, is getting the same dish. It's much more important from an a la carte restaurant where like you might have 30 people seated in the dining room, but there might only be 8 people that have ordered the chicken dish. And then you as the person working the station need to know, do I have enough portions? If this is the thing that needs to be tempered, do I have it pulled out? If it's something that I need to bake a la minute, is it in the oven? Do I have enough lead time? Do I have enough ramekins for this thing? All of those sorts of questions are important, and that's why you ask for an all day, usually from your expediter, because they're the one that controls the tickets. If you're struggling with this, in my specialized culinary program, I teach a technique called marking your board, where you have the ability to keep track of this on your station using mise en place in a way that you don't need to worry so much about tickets. And you won't have to ask that dreaded question to your expediter and fear running out. Secondly, we talked about the like working out the kinks and friends and family night and figuring out things that you might not even had top of mind, like running out of forks. I know they talked about it in a previous episode, but like those are those moments when like we have so many guests in the dining room at the same time. We didn't happen to know that there was going to need to be time spent like washing the forks, and then we needed to polish them. And then that ultimately sometimes in a restaurant's life cycle like eats into profits, because you're like, oh my goodness, we had such a good week, but then we have this operational thing that we need to actually make up for and compensate for. And so we're spending the profits to reinvest into the business to make sure that we don't have these problems down the line when we have this influx of guests again. Related to the forks, you hear Nat talking about, I need you to go to the nearest store and I need you to buy as many forks that are possible. That exists not on just the front of house side, but on the ingredient side too, on the culinary side. Because if you run out of kale, it is that situation. I kind of brought this up in a previous breakdown video, but like the sous chef will tell you, hey, I need you to go offline and I need you to actually go to the store and I need you to buy more beets, or I need you to buy a bag of flour, I need you to buy powdered sugar. And sometimes depending on the restaurant, it's this weird interaction where like you'll say, hey, yeah, the office person that is actually not working right now, I need you to put that on your personal card, I need you to keep the receipt, and then we will reimburse you when your paycheck comes. It's a very weird interaction at work. And thirdly, to the chef that's missing offline, we're obviously going to see what's happening there in a second, but I just wanted to call out the kind of like faux pas that he did in kind of leaving the line without giving anybody a heads up. You will often see line cooks saying offline, or I'm going offline, or I'm going to the walk-in, I'm going downstairs, basically giving a heads up to the broader kitchen that like I'm stepping away from my station and it's unmanned right now. It doesn't always mean that someone's going to like jump in and grab the saute pans that you were cooking on, because usually if you're going offline, you're leaving your station in a state where like nothing's going to burn. But the reason you call that out is so everybody knows that you're leaving, and so you don't have a situation like this where like especially the management team is like, hey, where the fuck is this person?
Please, focaccia. Hands, hands, hands.
Hands coming.
Seeing the context of what's on screen right now and reflecting it on what they're actually saying in this scene is one of those, like, you're just saying things that you think are said in a kitchen in a busy service environment. Because unless the entire leadership team of the restaurant has decided that the entire set of capable hands that are hired on staff to run food right here are just supposed to observe tonight, there's no reason to be calling hands right now. Because this team of people who is just standing here is standing here for that very reason. It is the, I am here, I'm ready for hands, I'm ready to be directed, tell me where I need to go and what dishes to drop. In a lot of great restaurants, this is the plant point where these food runners return to after they've either cleared a table or poured water or taken a dish to table 12. They come back to this location because that is done so that they don't have to constantly be screaming hands all night long like so many restaurants suffer with. That's why I think it's kind of funny that they're playing this out, like saying hands like we're the restaurant that doesn't have a full staff of food runners that are just standing here ready to go. Because think about it, who else on the team is running the food? The chefs are working the stations, Carmen, Sydney, and Tina are all working the sous chef management section, Richie's schmoozing the dining room, and Fack is just like wandering around. If we think back to the pre-service meeting, that means there's only 2 other people that were like front of house staff in these styles of uniform, and they're probably the ones who are behind the bar. And so what are these people doing?
I need hands for PX table 31, please.
How have we not talked about the VIP signifiers that happen in restaurants yet? So you just heard Richie tell Carmen that 31 was Claire, table 31 was Claire and her friend. And so you'll hear these happen all the time in restaurants where you're trying to signify a VIP without actually saying the words VIP. The language that the Bear restaurant has decided to use is a common one called PX. Certain restaurants will just straight up use the word soigné. It's like a French word that we've talked about in season 1, meaning like to be taken care of or just fancy. Another pretty common one is the signifier red red, which can often like carry multiple meanings. Red from like the stop sign red, so like you want to stop when you're doing this and just like triple check it. But then also we saw that scene when all of those Sharpies were in the kind of plastic square deli container on the pass, and that's really common because you'll have black Sharpies, which you'll happen to just tick off all the timings, and you'll add notes and the big table number maybe on the ticket as you're expediting. But then you have the red Sharpie that you're going to use to kind of like call out allergies, or like at the bottom of that ticket you might say table 8 is a red table, and you'll put that in red Sharpie so that as you're picking things up you can see at a glance that this is a VIP table. We want to spend extra time here. There's extra courses involved here. And you'll hear that when they're expediting. Instead of saying PX 31, you'll say we're picking up red 31, and then lets the whole kitchen know, okay, we're picking up a VIP table right now. If you have another signifier or just like cool ticket stuff you do in your kitchen or at your restaurant, I think myself and other folks and other viewers would love to know in the comments.
Where?
Fuck, yeah, that's right. All right, I got it.
What? Is it now the best time to do that? Great, cool. Can I, please?
So now we got 2 people offline. I mean, back to my rant, right? Like, they're not making any money tonight. No one's getting a check. Everybody's stressed out. The guests that you've invited for friends and family are just kind of like a little bit awkward about the fact that things are taking so long, and unforeseen disasters come up like plumbing issues, and you just look at this and you're like, could we have seen this coming? We absolutely could have.
Yeah, this is not right. The cook is wrong. Chef?
Yeah, but this shit is gonna put us behind.
Okay, well, you have to do it again. What's gonna put us behind is if you keep arguing with me.
Carmi said that this is.
I say, send it back and cook it again.
These are cold. These are fucking dead. Are these for the guy? Is the guy by the fucking what window? The fucking window is for the guy.
Yeah,
What the fucking window, Sid? What the
empty.
fuck?
What?
Please, just
fuck?
refire. Just refire.
You were out there
Refire.
talking to Wes,
Sid,
so I'm
Sid,
trying to what the
refire
heck
the
and
set.
do-
This is one of the most like crushing feelings if you're working a station and this type of context of what's playing out on screen is happening in the kitchen. I call this like the last mile problem. If you've ever heard of like the way that like scooter companies position themselves, they're saying they're trying to solve the last mile problem, because like you might be able to take your car and you take it to the park and ride, and then you get on the train, and then you take the train all the way into the city, but then it's that last mile between where the train station is and your office that they're trying to solve for. And I think of it very similar in our context in the kitchen, because what do you have? You have like the R&D that happens in the kitchen, and then you have the purveyor we decided to source the beef from or the fish from, and then the stuff gets arrived, and then we do all the butchering, and we do the curing, and we do the portioning, and then we teach the line cook how to cook this. We set up the cone roll grill, and everything is fired up and perfect, and then all of a sudden they cook the beef and it's ready to go, and we slice it, and we have the ceramics that we sourced, and everything goes on the plate, and then it doesn't get hands fast enough, and it doesn't go to the table in the right way, and then all of a sudden it's just like all for nothing. And so my optimistic brain says like carry the diligence that you have from other processes all the way through the last mile. Like it's not done until it like hits the table. And I talk about this principle in Total Station Domination called being a results guardian. It's this idea of like you've worked so hard to achieve this desired result, and like you need to protect that result and make sure that it either improves in quality or like continues to move through the process in a way where you're continuing to protect like this fish dish. It's like hot. You worked so hard on the ingredients and making sure that all the components were right. You need to make sure that like if it's on the pass and it's ready to go, even if you're the line cook, you're like on chef, you're saying, hey, we need hands for the 7 fishes. It needs to go. It needs to go. And like I find that to be so much more productive than what you'll often see line cooks do. And I fell into this trap when like I didn't think it was okay for me to do this, but I would like pass up my mise en place, and it was like, okay, cool, it's out of my purview, it's done, not understanding the fact that if I were to have just been a little bit pushier, I would prevent myself from having to refire this 7 fishes dish. It's taking from more of my mise en place. I'm starting to run low on portions now. Another thing I teach is this idea of if you're working a station, it's on you to identify what are the clear qualities we're going for in the execution. So with Tina, when she passes up that steak, and to me what it looked like was more or less like the fat cap on the top of the steak was like not rendered enough. And so that's where Sydney looks at that and she says like, the cook on this is wrong. And Tina just says, well, like, this is what chef told me to do. And if she were to actually be able to articulate the qualities that she's talking about, then we can actually have a conversation versus like these, I call them arbitrary adjectives. Like, this is wrong. It's like, what do you mean by wrong? And I don't know, to me, like if I was in that situation and I was Tina, I would take that steak and I would go to Chef Carmi after having the conversation with Chef Sydney, especially because he was right there in the kitchen, being able to say like, hey, Chef Sydney just let me know that the cook on this is wrong, but like you got with me and we talked about about this in this way, because then at least you can maybe save that steak and it can walk, or maybe you redo it the next time in a different way. A common theme that you'll see in kitchens where like the sous chef has one opinion, but chef de cuisine thinks something else. And in my experience, the kind of decision tree that I think about is you want to take that question to the person who has the closest proximity to the concept. And so in this context, it is Carmen who kind of has the end all be all say in this situation. Yes, Sydney's opinion matters and you don't want to like undermine her. And there's absolutely a way to do this where it doesn't feel like this tattletaling move where like Sydney just told Tina to do something and then she's like taking it over to Chef Carmen and saying, Tina told me to, it's not that. It is actually, you're trying to arrive at a reasonable source of truth here. Because what Tina is right about is the fact that like, especially if you need to take another steak out of the fridge and you need to have it temper and then you need to maybe do a triple sear on it, like that's going to take a ton of time, especially if like that table has been waiting on the steak and you need to like refire a new one. What is more likely to happen in that context is Tina's going to go to the person that's working that roast station or the grill station or whatever it is, and you're going to say, hey, I need you to take your steak from table 13 or whatever it is, and we're going to carve that. We're going to get this out with this table. You need to pull another one right now and you need to get it on the grill because we need to expedite this cook on this steak because we're on the next pickup where we're going to pick up the steak. You need another one added on. It's kind of the benefit of working roast stations when you're constantly kind of like pre-forecasting meat cooking times and protein timings versus like a garde manger station or a cold station where like everything that you're doing is kind of a la minute.
Okay, guys, I'm hopping on 7.
What in the world knife is Tina using online right now? I hope that is the Chef de Parties knife, who is currently offline doing other activities, because, you know, she had this knife from culinary school and then she was so excited to get Chef Carmen's knife. And this knife looks like a new knife to the roster.
Carmen's stuck in the walk-in.
Carmen's stuck in the walk-in.
Carmen's stuck in the walk-in.
I need your folks' stories and contexts and experiences of potentially getting stuck in the walk-in, because in my experience, even though the handle on the outside of the walk-in breaks, there is this like round shaped, it's connected to kind of like a lever or a rod that goes through the door, and then you have the ability to push that and kind of leverage the handle coming out from the inside of the walk-in. And that's every single walk-in that I've ever used in my almost 15 years of experience in the industry has that type of function. Yeah, you absolutely have walk-ins that don't have handles or that push thing on the inside, but that's because the knob on the outside is shaped differently and locks differently. I know the like crying in the walk-in is a meme in the industry, and so instead of like having that be something that plays out on screen, similar to like how the money got needed to somehow find its way into the restaurant in this like weird hiding it in the tomato cans scenario in season 1, they had to find a way from a writing perspective to get Carmen out of service in some way, shape, or form. And so his proximity to the rest of service that's happening here, it was like, it's very poetic almost. And so I understand from a storytelling perspective why that's playing out on screen right here. I'm just thinking about the accuracy of like, do we actually have stories of people getting stuck in the walk-in? Because also narratively, it's this idea that he's been putting this thing off of calling the fridge guy over and over and over again. And so his punishment for that behavior is like, hey, listen, man, you're going to have to sit out service, especially on opening night. I understand the thematic significance of Carmen getting stuck in the walk-in. I'm just questioning the accuracy of like, in that type of walk-in, is it the type of walk-in where he can actually get stuck inside of it? And we're going to pause it again when we see the inside of the walk-in and the handle situation that's present on the inside there. Taking the obvious callback to episode 7 of season 1 with like the tickets printing like crazy when Sydney forgot to turn the iPad ordering system off or whatever it was. Aside, I think that the only time that you'll see in a tasting menu individual tickets like this printing is if they've done the work to kind of segment the way that tickets print for individual stations. And so this is more often than not done on like, there's a pastry station, and then Marcus might be getting individual tickets for the courses that he's responsible for printed off on his station so he can keep track of things. But we're noticing that's not happening in this kitchen because he's asking for like, what's my board all day? If he was getting tickets printed, he wouldn't have that question. More often than not, like the ticket's going to print in a long format. The expediter has the ability to kind of like see the counts. There's allergies that might be listed or they're going to get highlighted by the expo. It would be this like incessant, constant printing if this was how that the tickets actually got printed at this restaurant. And you can argue that this might be just like, oh, well, we needed to figure this out on opening night, that the tickets shouldn't be printed this way. But it's also just a total ball ache if you happen to have like a rail in front of you and you're trying to manage all these little slips of paper versus like one long, you can keep everything together on the same ticket and you can move it along, you can adjust the timings, you can group tables together. Cutting the tape off the dispenser, man.
Okay, Richie. Drive.
Okay, guys, we're gonna refire for focaccia, okay? We're gonna walk that first.
Scenes like this give me goosebumps. It's freaking awesome to see like a team in a kitchen firing on all cylinders. Everybody's in the role that they need to be in, and there's just like it's organized chaos. This is why I love helping you folks in the context that I am able to do in my day-to-day, because like just like this show where we have the ability to see these characters, where they started, their progression and transformation that they got to experience, and then the final results coming together in like a real world environment like this. There's nothing quite like it. So I guess I'm just gonna sit back and enjoy this dance of a service that's progressing now.
Hey, Marcus, don't forget, you got cannolis 4 by 2 by 2.
Couple details. One, Sydney's actually expediting to Marcus in a way where he understands how many cannolis he's either out on or working or picked up on. Two, you hear this like 4 by 2 by 2. What does that mean? And in the context of this restaurant and the menu format that they've decided on, especially for some of the dishes with like family style presentations, or like there's a main thing and then there's a couple of sidecars with like little bowls of things or condiments or broths or stuff like that, that's really important, because if I'm told I'm on the roast station and hey, you're picking up 6 steak, it changes what my next actions are if it's a 6 top of steak or if it's a 4 by 2 or if it's 2 by 2 by 2, it changes. I need that additional context of like, how does this pickup break down in order to let me know, like, do I need extra side plates? How many plates do I need to pull? Or maybe in the context of Marcus, he might have multiple styles of plates that he plates the cannoli on. And so if he doesn't happen to have enough of something, you always usually want to make sure that the plates match at the table that you're setting it down on. And so if he's picking up 4 by 2 by 2 cannoli, if he needed 8 plates, maybe he might look at his, current inventory on his station and he says, I don't have 8 plates that match, but because it's 4 by 2 by 2, I have the ability to say, okay, these are 4 like plates, I'm going to put these together, and then 2 by 2, they're different plates, but I'm going to make sure that they match.
Mortadella and Parmesan cannoli with a mostarda caviar. Caviar, it's not really.
Also, I know they talked about having a spherified element on this dish and the little like caviar that Marcus made, but this is definitely trout roe, right? Like there is the little balls in the inside of the balls that you can totally see. And so I understand that from an aesthetic perspective, they needed to like make this contrast with the green and the brown and the white. But I've done the sodium alginate projects in my career enough times to know that like they don't usually look like this, right? It tracks accurately to what they talked about with the dish of like, we made this caviar and it goes on this dish. I just don't think it's like actually made with the ingredient that they said it was. In the same way that like if you've ever heard photo shoots where like they use motor oil instead of maple syrup on pancake photo shoots, or like you take shortening and scoop that for ice cream that doesn't melt. This is kind of like one of those ideas of like it's a placeholder for the real thing, but it's not the real thing. It's something else. Again, I'm acknowledging there's different types of restaurants and walk-in manufacturers, but like I saw the little thing down here that just like so obviously to me is the natural position where the handle should go to kind of push out and give yourself the ability to exit the walk-in even if you're inside and the handle's kind of janky on the outside. And it looks like they like removed it or put something else over it in this scene just because they needed him to get stuck in the walk-in.
2 by 4 by 5. Got the tea?
Got it working, chef.
Yo, Sid, we got a hold of fish. We got a shellfish allergy. I don't know how you guys sell that.
Yeah, Connor, let's sub amberjack, please.
I asked myself in this scene because he like does it in a weird way, but then Richie does it the right way, and at least in my opinion, where he says 86 the mostarda because there's no cherries on this person. And it's like 86 is like a dish has run out. We don't have any more of that dish left. I'm almost positive that story comes from a restaurant that had like numbered items on the menu, and that number 86 dish was like the most popular dish on that menu. And then because of that dish always like selling out, it was this common industry trope that ultimately became a thing where people would say 86 this thing, we don't have any of this left, it's off the menu. And so for him to say we're going to 86 the mostarda, it's like you wouldn't often hear that being talked about in that way. It would be we're going to pick up 4 cannoli, 1 is no cherry, or like sans cherry you might hear sometimes. Or in the context of the fishes dish where he says what's your sub going to be for the shellfish, that's more often than not what people will talk about. And in fine dining and tasting menu contexts, where another kind of prevailing philosophy is you don't repeat ingredients in a tasting menu, and you combine it with this idea of like unreasonable hospitality, we focus on the details, we want this to be pleasurable for you, we're going to collect the allergy and dietary restrictions and preferences and aversions you have right when you sit down before the menu starts. You might have this situation where somebody can't have an ingredient that you're going to try to serve them. And so that onus is often pushed onto the station of like, what are you going to substitute this for? Because in a lot of the dishes, it's kind of like it is a shellfish dish, and so if we remove the shellfish, what is left? We're just going to serve you a bowl of garnish? No. So we're going to substitute with like, we're going to have roasted cauliflower or mushroom. I teach this too. I do a live exercise with students called out of place planning, where we basically write a menu from scratch. And then we also just kind of line out all the allergy and dietary modifications, because I think it's important for stations to have context on like, what do I need to be planning for? What is my kind of like mode of action that I'm going to go into if I get a no gluten guest that comes in? And ultimately that helps you with ordering, and then it helps you with prepping so that you have all of this stuff at least reasonably ready to go. I'm not of the mind that it needs to be completely finished on your station when you go into service, unless you're in a situation where like, you know that there's 4 vegan guests coming in. Then you have to kind of like make a little bit of extra time throughout your day. And certain restaurants are of different minds about this. Certain places say, no, there's actually no modifications that we make. If you can't eat this thing, you're either going to like have to forego the dish, or we're just going to skip along, especially if it's an allergy. We don't want to get you sick or anything like that. We don't do the time to make any sort of adjustments or modifications. And other restaurants, it's like, it would be blasphemous for us to serve you something that is not a composed dish, even if it needs to change the ingredients that are a part of this. So I'm trying to not paint with too broad of a brush, but like, that's what you're seeing here, where Sydney is actually giving the instruction to the guy on the station and saying, hey, we need to shift the shellfish to using a different fish, which is amberjack instead. I mean, I haven't even talked about this menu yet. Like, I think it's actually a great looking menu. Would totally get down on the menu that they're serving tonight.
I just don't think I can take it.
What can't you take?
I don't know if anybody else shares this sentiment. You can let me know in the comments, but I think it's weird to cook for your family. I've like cooked for my dad at a couple different occasions throughout my career. I never got to cook for my mom in our new restaurant that I worked in before she passed, and I think I kind of like that that's how it ended up panning out. I don't know, this show just shines such a light on like what an insular world it is being in food and restaurants and chef culture, that like you can't expect other people who aren't in it to understand. And we see the juxtaposition, right, with like Sydney's dad being there and transforming throughout the season, from doubting her to supporting her and being excited to sit down. And you compare that with Carmen's mom, who like, yes, she showed up at the restaurant, but she's not going to go in and sit down and have a meal, because like, what is she going to do? What is going to be the change, and how is that going to affect Carmen and like all the other people? Like, it's going to shift attention so much in that interaction, where like I've been in situations where like chef's mom comes in and it is absolutely like, it's awkward. It's weird. I don't know how to describe it. If someone has a better way to put this into words, or if you phrased this or heard somebody talk about this in a cool way, I'd love to know down in the comments, but I'm acknowledging the dynamic here. Didn't cut the tape. Uh-oh.
Dude, what the fuck are you doing? Dog, is that meth?
Oh God,
I am too much of a square to have partaken before. I'm sure there's a gajillion stories that can be shared in the comments from drug use in the industry. I always just like personal preference, just only enjoy the altered state of like being caffeinated more so than anything else. It's just, there's too many other like flow-on effects and second order consequences of like doing other drugs that are going to like, again, change your state. And then there's either an addiction that comes with it that is going to like, there's a reliance there that I maybe didn't like, or there's like a hangover that comes after. And I never wanted to take that disadvantage in my day to day, because when I was in kitchens, I was trying to be focused. I was trying to be present, and I was trying to improve. And I had this boss, this manager at this butcher shop that I worked at one time, and he told me like, you'd be so surprised the progress that you can make if you're willing to kind of just like go sober and then ultimately just pour all of your focus into your work. He was basically sharing like, you're removing disadvantages and like handicaps from yourself that you don't have to experience. And that really resonated with me, and I know that it's resonated with some of you folks as well, who have sent me messages that like, you used to be on certain drugs and you've decided to remove them from your life, and you're experiencing some positive ramifications in your career. So yeah, bring on the stories in the comments, but yeah, this couldn't be me. I guess what I am happy to see in the industry over the past couple years is like, this is the ratio that it's turned into, looking at the restaurants that I've worked at, from the sense of like how many people are using like illicit substances or drugs throughout their week. And it is like, how many people are in the kitchen here? It's like, there's 8 of them, I would say. And it's like 1 out of 8, versus you look at the numbers that people might have talked about in like the Anthony Bourdain, you know, Kitchen Confidential era, where it was like more than half of the team was doing this kind of stuff. And it's not to say that there aren't kitchens where that number is maybe still the case. It's just, in my experience, I think the industry is getting a lot healthier, and it is kind of like focusing on sleep and going to the gym, or like maybe focusing on your diet a little bit more and removing this stuff from your day to day.
No, you can fire him. You should fire him immediately.
All right, cool. I'm gonna fire him before he comes back in here.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that's why it's like it's not tolerated by like the next generation of people who have come up and who have gotten far in their careers without drug use. And they are just not tolerating the kind of, again, the trade-offs that come with the use of it all. And you see, they're talking about there's benefits. Makes him charged with fucking lightning and he can prep like nobody's business, but it's actually not the type of behavior we want to condone. And I'm wanting to be sensitive with the fact that like there are addiction struggles that people deal with. And we publish resources actually on my company's website to make sure that chefs and industry people can like get at least directed towards whatever the help that they need is. I know this is a fictional show. I'm just trying to be mindful. The other detail that I'm noticing in this scene is you notice that they started that push at around like 7:30 on the clock and it's 8:30 now. And because they had like all one seating for friends and family, like you will absolutely have this like wind down that starts to happen. But if this was actually like a opening week or like this was a real service from the sense of they had reservations open throughout the entire night, there is going to be this lull, but then there might be another seating that's going to start at 9 o'clock. And so everybody's going to reset, get ready to go, and then they're going to jump right back into it and do it all over again.
Josh is 86, by the way.
That's a good use of 86. She said she was going to throw up like 40 times after service was over. I just want him to, like, push that button. Carmen, just push the round thing on the door. This is a sick shot. As much as I don't like how they did Carmen in this last episode, we're obviously seeing him kind of like regress back a little bit because he had this drama with Claire and then the screaming match with Richie. And so like, I don't necessarily know if this scene was productive for him. I wish that we would have seen like a more cohesive transformation for Carmen. I think that's the thing with chefs that are hard-headed, especially those of us who like, we rely on other people to guide us and teach us lessons about not just the world, but ourselves. But hey, we got to set up season 3 in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if I love the way that they left Carmen at the end of this season. But yeah, he needed to not be involved. He needed to learn to let go. Because it's true, I remember in my event production company days, the first time that an event happened and me and my business partner were not there for the event, it was a very weird feeling. And it's weird because you attach your ego and your identity to your work. And when you don't have the ability to do it in the same way that you normally do, it causes a lot of these feelings to bubble up. I do think that this gives a lot of like additional complexity that they can hopefully build on in the next season. So there we have it. That is Pro Chef Breaks Down The Bear. If you enjoyed this breakdown of season 2 and you happen to have somebody else in your life who happened to really enjoy The Bear, or you have an industry person who is maybe like budding and wanting to get into restaurants and chef life, I would love for you to share this series with them because my goal with all of this is like to provide as much value as possible. We're making the push for 100,000 subscribers with this series, so I'd love for you to subscribe, like this video, and check out some of the other free videos that I put out on this very channel. Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your insights. Thanks so much for watching. It's just been a joy to do this for you folks. And so my name is Justin Khanna. Thanks so much for your attention as always, and I hope you have a good one.